right? It starts right there. Just his leadership, his direction, his vision for the program. But within that, also his ability to give us autonomy, us as coaches to be able to install and teach the way you want to, has been really, I don't want to say refreshing, but it just invigorating, I guess would be a good way to say it. So that part's been great. We were talking about Coach Rossi, my familiarity with Joe and just background and history with him. So knowing the scheme, knowing the defense, knowing the fundamentals and technique, so that's made that transition also very easy. They've done some new things and different things, but 90% of it's, this is what we did, previously. I got it. Yep, understand that. And now it allowed me to go back. Now, how can I teach that better? We're talking about the details and the fundamentals of the position. Now to really dive into the details and the fundamentals of the position, because when I was with Joe before, I had all 4 of those down guys with one of the graduate assistants helping me. Now I'm a little bit unique at how we've divided the staff here. I can take that rush-in position and just dive into that and really, we were talking about, right, getting one-on-one teaching instruction with those guys that are out there.
I asked a couple of the guys, including the blending of a West Coast staff versus a Midwest staff.
Sure.
Particularly with the Big Ten becoming that.
That's what the Big Ten is now, right? Yeah, it's a Midwest and a West Coast deal.
It seems like a good timing factor for that. And I guess, how do you kind of mesh those ideologies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think exactly that. It's just, okay, our history with Coach Rossi here in the Big Ten, right? This is now, let's not count the numbers, but multiple stops for me here in the Big Ten. So knowing from that side of it, what can we expect, right? Who are the teams, that we know? But to your point, there's 4 new ones coming in that we don't know, but they do. It's, we are going to have experience, and we've already talked about some of these things in our staff meetings, right? Okay, I know these teams are going to do this. I know this program does this. We have them on the schedule. We've got to be prepared for that. We've got to be ready for that. Now, right, you guys coming from the West, right? How about those other schools? How are they built, right? What are the things that are going to be important to them? What do we need to be preparing for now, so when it happens in season, we're not sitting there in game week, well, we don't really have this, right, hammered out in our system. So now we can kind of be able to be ready for both sides of, Wisconsin has changed now, but, Wisconsin, Iowa has changed now also, right? But those Wisconsin, the Iowas, right? Those people that were, they were just ground and pound you, right? Where that West Coast is a little bit different, right? It's going to be a little bit more aired out, and so those guys, how are they going to build and bring that in, And a great thing, even as you look at now, what's Washington? Washington's, right? Washington's Arizona, really. Yeah. Right? What were they doing at Arizona? How are they building that? Yeah. So
now
I think
Alabama is Washington.
Right now, Washington, right? So I think it just allowed us to have a great conversation of who are these people? How do we need to be preparing again now, right? So that when we get there, it's we can be working things through spring ball, through summer OTA camps, right? And having our guys dialed in and prepared before those times arise.
Coach, welcome. Teams have philosophies. What would you say your group's philosophy is, and how did you pick that up along the way with the other stops that you had?
Well, one of the things I always want positionally for guys on defense, right, I always want them to have ownership of it. So I actually asked them, right, and we sit down and we did this before we started spring ball. What do you want your identity to be? Because I can tell them, but what do you want your identity to be? Because it's way easier when they tell me this is what they want to be, right? When they're living up to that, hey, great job. This is what you said you want to be, right? You're doing it. Or I didn't say that you want to be this, but what I see on film is not what you said you want your identity to be.
That's unique because you could take an authoritative role and say, right, I think this is what we should do, but instead of taking that, you let them kind of create the scenario.
It's ownership. Right, and these young men today, I think these young men today, they don't want anything different than everybody said, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, right? No, they still want the same things. How we get there, I think, though, is different. Right? But these young men, they still want the same things that they wanted 30 years ago. But how do they get there? And I think that's a big part of it. Is it was 30, 50 years ago, it was authoritative. Right. It was dictatorship.
Sure.
Right now, right, let's have a little bit of democracy so that now there's ownership in it. And then now I can still hold them accountable the same way. But this is what you said.
Yeah.
isn't what I said, it's what you said.
That's great.
Right, and so that when those guys have ownership of that, now we have things we believe in defensively, right? What we want our identity to be. But even to the guys, as we talked about that, and as I talked in my position room, I was like, guys, we can tell you this is what we want it to be, but you guys have got to have ownership of that. If you don't have ownership, it's just us talking.
Are they shocked when they get the opportunity to give that kind of buy-in? Is it something they may not get as used
I don't
to?
think so. I think hopefully, right, we as coaches, right, coaches are just teachers nowadays. Right, as teachers, I think the classrooms are evolving to that as well. And so I think these guys aren't surprised because I think most classrooms are evolving to that also nowadays.
Great, thanks.
Right, the conversation, right? Is it lecture or is it conversation and dialogue?
Sure.
That's what you're really trying to create in these classrooms, because our meeting rooms, that's all they are. It's just a classroom, and let's teach, right? Let's be interactive. Let's show things, right? I mean, we showed something in special teams, a couple weeks ago, how we teach our coverage, and right, the details aren't important, but showed a boa constrictor. Right, grabbing a rabbit snake, right, wrapping that thing up. But that's how we want our coverage, right, to start to look. Is how boa constrictors, right, squeeze and suck the life out of that.
It's a visual they won't forget.
It's a visual they won't forget. But that's what they're looking for today, right? How can I take these interactive visualizations and now put it into play, right? And then I take that now and hey, in the coverage we got to constrict this, just like that boa, right? We got to be able to constrict this back, So I think all of these things, you're just looking for unique ways to teach, because that's what teaching coaching is.
Specialists that you guys have too. It seems like you can focus on that.
Oh, sure.
I would imagine how much does having Beckley and Kim kind of?
Oh, they're extremely talented individuals, and that group holistically is not just those guys. Very talented group as we're looking at what they're bringing back, and I believe that we're talking about some of the schemes and fundamentals, whether it's the rush ends or whether it's the punters. Right? One of the best things to do is ask people to do what they do well. If we can ask them to do what they do well, right, let's build it around them. I worked for a guy, a long time ago. It's from the Bill Belichick and the Bill Parcells family, Al Grove. When I was at Virginia, he used to talk about, think players first, plays second. What do your players do well? And then put them in positions to do what they do well, right? And then again, we'll build the schemes around them the way we need to. Let's put the players and the individuals in positions to do what they do well. Right, and then obviously, right, thinking schematically too, right, as we look to defend people, as we look to, right, do things on special teams, who are the guys that we got to stop? Now let's think about how we've got to stop them. Think players first, plays second.
In regards to that, talking about somebody like a Chris Bogle, in regards to doing, asking him to do what he does well.
Right, and that's where I think Chris, he comes in, he's got a little bit of background experience. He's played in some two-point stances previously, so this has been a little more natural for him, this transition to this rush end. But, we're going to put Chris in positions. He's going to play a 6 technique over a tight end. He's going to play essentially a 5 technique over offensive tackles. He's going to cover guys man-to-man. He's going to be, right, a move, a twister, and twist in games defensively, whether that's first base down pressures, whether that's third down pressures. We're going to put him in positions to highlight his skills. Again, right, what does this player do well? And then let's go ask him to do what he does well. And again, thinking players first, play second.
Does that mean he might be covering a back out of the backfield, or
absolutely
tight end off the line?
Absolutely. This rush end position we were talking earlier, it's a hybrid outside back or DN thing. So sometimes he's going to have DN jobs, right? Play over tight end, right? Play in the C gap, be strong and sturdy. And sometimes it might be, hey, you're going to be over this tight end man to man.
What do you got, 5 or 6 guys in your room right now?
5 right now.
We talked about that. That small number probably makes that teaching component.
Oh, 100%. Right. Again, that classroom interaction is very, very different. Even as I built, we were all able to kind of create our own classrooms. They used to have desks and chairs and long tables, and I said, I want that out of here. Right. And we've got kind of the old school chair with the folding arm, but it's on wheels. Right, and we haven't been but we'll do more of this as we get into some of the summer and we get into preseason camp. But now let's move those chairs out to the side of the room. We've got a pop-up in there. We got hand shields. Let's create this interactive teaching environment. I can sit here and show you on film. I can draw it on a board, but sometimes the best way to do things is stand up and do it. So right, we can create this
Montessori approach to football.
a little bit. It is a little bit, right? It is a little bit of Montessori approach. Like, let's get you up. But then what else are you doing in that? You're changing the flow of the meeting. You're changing the routine of the meeting, the attention spans, and all of a sudden you're creating this up and down, move around, right? Let's talk, let's engage, let's move, right? Like, now again, you're talking attention spans 10, 15 minutes, right? We should be changing and doing something different. And that creates an opportunity to do that. Like, we'll have them stand up and like, okay, right? Now, see how you move on this, see how the feel of this happens, right? I've got pop-up bags, I've got hand shields in the meeting, and we can go do things interactively.
What's sort of the, Chad, sorry if you
No,
could,
you're
because
good.
just what's the sort of the philosophical like genesis of the position? Like, why the 2-point? Does it come from the offenses just versus the traditional 4 down? Like,
Yeah, sure.
where does
Right.
it come from?
Well, it goes back to a lot of, question asked. The jobs that they're going to be asked are very different. So, and some of those jobs you can't do from a 3-point stance. Or I shouldn't say can't. They're extremely difficult to do from a 3-point stance. So now we can do that from a 2-point, and you don't know offensively that, okay, hey, we're going to be in our pressure package, or we're going to be in our base package here, base calls. So I think just to allow those guys the freedom and flexibility. But then it also gives us, I think, another set of eyes that can see, right? Instead of having 4 guys down, and those guys, once they put their hand in the stance, you can't see a whole lot. Right? And then those guys for the rush ends, it allows them to take a little bit of stress and pressure off the backers. Hey, what's the backfield set that they're in? Where are the tight ends alignment? What are the details of the tight ends alignment? Right? Hey, the back move, the back, flip sides, right? Like, now our rush end can make some of those calls, and now the backers don't have to.
Is there a response to modern offenses in a way?
Oh,
that you're
100%.
seeing?
Yeah, it's 100%. It's 100%. And now we can take those guys, and we have it in our package. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do with those guys in our check systems. And how do we want to play this formation? How do we want to play this set? How do we want to play open pictures? How do we play empty pictures? How do we? Right? And we have variety within the scheme and system. And if they're standing up, it becomes a little bit easier to get in and out of things.
It seems like a pretty unique skill set that you'd like ideally there.
Oh, it's.
How much does your room look like now? Maybe what you hope it can look like in 4 or 5 years when you can sort of mold it to that position a little bit.
And it's a great question because it is a different skill set, right? And the model that they had recruited here, and I appreciate the guys I have, the Bogles and Jalen Thompsons and Shot and By, and right, those guys. It's different than maybe what they were recruited for, but they have really embraced. Hey, this is really valuable for me because modern offenses. Where do they trickle down from? NFL, right? All these things, right, coming out of that. And so now it allows them to have some flexibility as they look at the next opportunity. If you watch the NFL Combine and you watch the NFL Draft, there's a word that's used very frequently, projection. What does that word projection really mean? Well, we don't really know. We're guessing. We're projecting, but we've never really seen evidence and proof on film. So I think this position for these guys, it becomes very attractive for them as they look at next opportunities. Again, they're going to do 4-down defensive end, D-line jobs, but then they're going to do outside linebacker jobs. So they get to put on film for whatever scheme or system. Hey, this 3-4 defense wants to look at me. This 4-3 defense wants to look at me. Those people that are evaluating them see evidence and proof. He can do that job, right? No doubt. And I think really holistically, I think this is happening all across the country. Teams are realizing there's got to be a level of simplicity in how you teach it. Now, you can't be, sitting ducks, sitting targets, but you better have processes, you better have rules that you can come in, you can teach guys, and so that they can play early. And again, they're having to learn new schemes and systems. And the days of, okay, bring in a freshman, develop him, hopefully he doesn't play till his 3rd year, he's got time. Those days are kind of gone now. I mean, that's still part of what we want to do here as a program, is still be a developmental program. But there's always going to be, hey, we got to go get a linebacker, we got to go to get a D tackle, we got to go get a safety, whatever that is. So there better be some simplicity in your scheme that guys can come in, they can learn it in 6 months, and they can go execute at a high level. It's definitely different than it was 10 years ago, that's for sure. 5, 3.
Can you talk about what you saw from the front 7 this spring and what you want to see to end it?
Yeah, one, I think there's just this is the biggest praise I can have for our young men is they've done everything that we've asked them to do. There hasn't been like pushback. There hasn't been resistance. That they have just bought in. And again, I credit a lot of that to just Coach Smith and to Coach Rossi and their leadership. That these guys would say, okay, we're buying in, we're all in on this. So that's the first thing. But then because of that, what has that allowed them to do? Attack the fundamentals, attack the scheme, right? Really learning and saying, okay, I'm all in on this thing. I think as we look at that group, they just, hey, let's pin our ears back and let's go attack, because that's what you need out of a great front. Right, the guys are going to pin their ears back and go attack, and our guys across the board have said, okay. Now, again, it's not perfect. We're always working to check things off the list and make our corrections and make your mistakes, learn from them, grow, move on. And we've got our ways that we teach that and talk about that within the program. But I think then that's the next thing, is that they have attacked. Okay, I can get better at this, right? I can work on this today, right? Let's focus on this one thing and get better at that. And I think by and large, the guys have said, okay, we're bought in, they're pinning their ears back and attacking, and they're learning and growing and improving. And I think it's going to allow them to really play at a high level this fall.
When you saw Bogle,
No, that's there you go.
when you saw Bogle on film and
Yeah.
Thompson before, when you first got here, what did you think, and how did you think they'd be able to?
There's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for it, because there are some new techniques, new fundamentals that they hadn't necessarily done. But I thought they were guys that played aggressive. They showed the athletic skill set that we were looking for, and they made plays. They were disruptive players. So that's the thing that probably excited me the most, is like if we can get them comfortable talking about, right, those guys really knowing their fundamentals, and once they know their fundamentals and they're brilliant at those basics, then they can go be confident and play fast. When you get these guys to go be confident and play fast, they can be playmakers for us defensively. And hey, if we can get D linemen to make plays, right, hey, they're right at the line of scrimmage, hopefully 2 yards in the backfield. Hey, it's better for us if we're making plays at 2nd and 12 rather than linebackers making a play and it's 2nd and 8. We're going to be better defense if we're making more 2nd and 12s, right? Which then lead into 3rd and 10s rather than 3rd and 4s. So we'll be better coaches. We can get these guys go there, and I think our guys have really bought into that. Yeah.
There's going to be growing pains when you're implementing a new scheme, and obviously spring ball is kind of laying the foundation for what they need to
Sure.
build to be able to build off of it. Where do you guys just think you're at in terms of guys getting more comfortable with what their roles are looking to be?
Yeah, year ones are always hard, right? You're talking, right, new fundamentals, new schemes, and new culture, right? And those wear on these guys on so many different levels, emotionally, physically, right, what they're asking, what Coach Mack does up in that weight room. And again, so there's so many changing parts for these young men that there's stressors to that. But I think, I'm sorry, I got this off on a tangent. Give me the question one more time, just the short version of it. I was thinking about year one.
Just where you think you guys are at.
Yeah, okay, I knew I had somewhere. Right.
Yeah.
So one of our other coaches said this the other day, and I think he's right. We were on the gravel road, full of potholes, like it's bumpy, it ain't smooth, right? Like there's a lot of work to do to get this thing running well. I think we're on that process that we've moved on to a good Michigan road.
Is it under construction?
Right. It's under construction, right? But there's points where you see the smoothness. Now there's still some potholes, there's still some bumps in the road, right? I appreciate you guys laughing. But I think that makes sense to you guys, right? Like there's some points that you see the things smoothing out a little bit. You see that, like you see some of the progress. You see some of that construction. Oh man, they did that really well. That's good. Oh, whoop, hit the brakes. All right. We screwed this one up a little bit. But we're seeing some of the progress off just that dirt, bumpy gravel road, and now there's some progress being made here in this thing, and you can see that, and you can see the guys are getting a little more confident. That you can see them playing a little faster, a little freer, and again, great defensive players, right? You want them to be confident in the scheme and be able to then move from playing fit ball to football, right? It's still doing your job, right? You're still in the fits, right? You're still in the right spots, but I'm confident of what it can be. And now, again, back to our pin years back, let's go attack, let's play on the other side line of scrimmage, secondary, right? And I really am confident in what I'm doing. Now I can go lock this guy down. I'm not hesitant on those things. And now you're playing football, right? So hopefully that answers it.
That's a great visual. Thank you. I think that's a good